Hey everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Sean Casten. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure.
Something that really caught my eye last week, you introduced legislation that really has the potential to upend politics as we know it. Can you give us an overview of a common sense vision for American democracy?
Sure. The basic thing that was driving us is how many times does every member of Congress go home and their constituents say, we know that overwhelming majorities of the American people want X to happen, whatever that X thing is. And yet you guys aren't doing it, guys and gals. And the answer is that we actually have within the structure of our government these huge minoritarian provisions. The United States Senate is not a majoritarian institution. 17% of the American people elect half of the people in the Senate. Um, the Supreme Court is not an elected body, and the House amazingly has not grown since 1911. So we've had 3.5 times population growth, but no growth in the members of the House. So what we sought to do is to try to fix those three things and the Electoral College while we're at it, because I'm from Chicago, Daniel Burnham, make no small plans, so that we can try to make sure that we have a government closer to the vision that our founders laid out. As Thomas Jefferson said, government should represent the majority will. And if it's not, let's fix it.
According to a recent Gallup poll, Americans of both parties think that the biggest issue facing this country right now is government and poor leadership. How will adding these lawmakers solve that problem?
Well, so what we're trying to do again is make sure that those of us in government are responsive to the needs. So let's take just one of the three bills we introduced. It's a constitutional amendment to add 12 at-large senators to the Senate who would be elected nationally. So you would then have 10% of the Senate that would have to vote based on the will of the American people. Now that sounds like the way every senator votes, right? Except that if you actually look at the structure of the Senate, if you're a senator from Wyoming, you have to vote based on the will of 570 people, 1,000 people in Wyoming. And you have just as many votes on the Senate floor as someone from my home state of Illinois who represents 13 million people, or someone from California who represents 40 million people. So he said, let's expand the Senate to provide a block of senators who are responsive to public will, still have the structure of the Senate as we sit, but to make sure that you now have a body that is better able to do what the American people want. We've done some similar changes in the House, but that's the idea, is to make us accountable to the American people.
Sure, I want to break down that senator part. Where did you get the number 12 for these 12 at-large senators?
Oh, there's no magic to it. And if somebody really wanted it to be a bigger number, we'd certainly support that. The honest answer is we wanted, because the senators serve 6-year terms, and every 2 years there are senates up for vote. We wanted to do a number that was a multiple of 3, so that over the course of 3 2-year periods over a 6-year term, you could elect all of them. And so 9 felt like too few, 15 felt like too many, so we landed at 12. There's no magic to that, but it does have the happy coincidence of saying this is 10%. It's a 10% block of the Senate. It's big enough to be meaningful, not so big as to completely change the body in unpredictable ways.
Sure, and would these 12 senators have more power than other senators because they're not beholden to their state, opposed to, let's say, a senator from Illinois?
No, look, every senator has the same amount of power, right? You get one vote on the Senate floor, you serve on committees, you have constituents you represent. So there's no greater power other than, I suppose the fact that, right now, senators from small states have, disproportionately greater power than senators from big states. But it's basically the same structure, again, just with the idea that we want to fix the Senate. I want to give an example to help understand, because this all sounds very academic without details. Last year, we passed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. Passed out of the House, passed out of the Senate. The president signed it. It made lynching a federal crime. Was named after Emmett Till, whose murder, in many ways triggered the civil rights era in the 60s. That bill first passed the House in 1922. It took 100 years for the United States Senate to decide that lynching was bad. Like, you have to put that in context, right? In 1922, when this first passed the House, Emmett Till wasn't even born yet. Martin Luther King wasn't born yet. Malcolm X wasn't born yet. Medgar Evers wasn't born yet. How many lives have been lost because the Senate structurally is not doing what the American people want. And it's with that sort of understanding of what the Senate does that says, well, what would have happened differently if 10% of the Senate was pushing for the public will? Those people would have been less likely to filibuster the bill that we sent over, more likely to vote for it. We know it was popular because the House of Representatives that represents all the American people passed it again and again and again and again over those 100 years. So it's those types of problems we're trying to fix.
And putting that into perspective is very interesting.